Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Southside Beat here on the DK Pittsburgh Sports Steelers YouTube channel and podcasting network. Chris Halicke, Matt Williamson to my left, as always. Matt, how you doing, my friend?
I'm real good. How are you?
Doing good, man.
Good.
It's been a little bit, the news has calmed down a little bit. We're not having to, be on the seat of our pants for a Jalen Ramsey trade again. But still a lot that we can do to break that down, talk about it. Last week we hit a bunch on Jalen Ramsey, the fit. We can continue to dive more into that, but definitely this week, since we didn't really talk much about it last week, definitely wanted to hit more on the Jonnu Smith side of this trade, because
you know what? Before we do, I'm going to interrupt you, and I'm excited to talk about the offensive side of it for sure.
Yeah.
But it just so happens I was listening to Bucky Brooks and Daniel Jeremiah's podcast the other day, and they were breaking down the trade. And DJ had some things to say that I just want our listeners to kind of get a glimpse of. He was a scout for the Ravens. And a big thing then, that was like in the heart of Steeler Raven nastiness, the good old days, you know what I mean? Yeah. And the big saying in those walls in Baltimore was building a bully. The only way you win in North is you build the biggest bully. You're not looking for nice guys, you know what I mean? And I did a lot of homework on Ramsey. I know people that know him. He's not a nice guy. He's going to tell you when things are crappy, and he's aggressive. And DK Metcalf, not really a nice guy on the field. No. Rodgers doesn't really care if you like him or not. I think that big picture, people are focusing on, boy, the Steelers just grabbing all these old guys. No, they're kind of grabbing a lot of dudes that have, not that they're young, but Slay has some attitude. Dale and I did the drive a couple weeks ago, and he calls in. He's like, "It's Slay." He doesn't even introduce himself. Like, they all have something about them. They have some crap to them. Kind of like the James Harrison days. And I think the Steelers are recognizing that. I like George Pickens, but I don't need guys that block when he wants and runs routes when he wants. I need guys to kick that guy down the steps. You know what I mean?
Slay last year in that game between the Steelers and Eagles got into it with Darnell Washington, of all people.
Right. Like, these guys are bulldogs. There's a reason they're good players. They're talented, but they also have an edge to them. They're not grabbing a bunch of choir boys. I'm not saying they beat up grandmas or anything either, but we need to build a bully. What do you think? Why a black is? You know what I mean?
Right.
Eric
Harmon.
Harmon, right. These are just big, physical, nasty dudes.
Yeah, no, I'm glad you made that point about Jalen Ramsey, though, because there is, I don't know if it just comes to the territory because they play cornerback and they're the worst tacklers on the field, and that's typically the way it goes with most football teams, but Jalen Ramsey is very, very physical. He lays the wood. He will absolutely put his I remember watching some of the tape on him a few days ago, and there was one in particular. I think the Patriots were running pin and pull, and he was crashing down in from the slot and had to take on a guard running straight at him.
Most of those guys just choose not to.
Right. And he went right after him, used his athleticism to his advantage, not necessarily sidestepped the block, but was able to get past the guard, which is ultimately what you want to do. You don't want to just be a heat-seeking missile with a broken guidance chip like Mark Robinson and just hit the nearest warm body next to you.
Right.
But, made the play, made the tackle. But a lot of corners, when they see that 300-pound guard running straight at them, they're a lot of them will put their tail between their legs because they're giving 80, 90 pounds to them
all day long. Yeah. So I recognize that it could go wrong. If they're 2-6, you're probably going to hear about it in the locker room. You know what I mean? For better or worse. But that could be good. And it sets the tone even for the next quarterback. I just think that some attitude was clearly on the agenda this offseason.
Oh, 100%. You could tell by the moves they made. I just put up on DKPittsburghSports.com the 5 changes we could see on defense, on both sides of the ball, both on offense and on defense. But when you're looking at defense, you're looking at the things they're going to be doing. More man coverage, more blitzing, most likely.
I would say.
And those two kind of go hand in hand. You have to, you're in man coverage majority of the time when you blitz. So if
certainly
you blitz,
have a more variety of coverages,
right?
Cover 4, cover 2,
Right.
Yeah.
Because cover 4 will go down as zone coverage, but it's zoned with man principles, and so it's different. But yeah, they definitely added that for sure. They definitely added more attitude, more grit, and again, these are talented players. DK Metcalf is a very talented player. Jalen Ramsey is a very talented player. Darius Slay, despite being 34 years old, was still really good in coverage last year.
Yeah.
So then when you put, dude, those three corners with Joey Porter Jr. and Darius Slay and Jalen Ramsey, that's a lot of mean, physical, tough type playing. I mean, a
lot of Pro Bowls and a lot of interceptions, and
the nicest of the three might actually be Slay.
maybe, right?
Maybe,
yeah,
because Porter's got an edge to him.
Remember whose dad is, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So, all right, really quick before we take a break, Jonnu Smith.
I got one more thing on defense. And
okay.
Then we can break, and then we'll do 2 segments on.
Okay,
Johnny,
sounds good.
Not to hijack the
leader role
no,
here, it's good. I mean,
I don't know if you caught my podcast. I think it came out today or yesterday about their defensive alignment stuff.
Oh yeah.
But Pro Football Focus, I forget what words they used, but they basically were talking about all 32 defensive fronts in the league, where they align their guys. And I think all of our listeners know, unlike Bosa, Parsons, Garrett, TJ's always basically on the quarterback's right. But the Steelers move their defensive linemen less than any team in the league. Like, you know exactly where Cam Hayward's going to be. Like, it's just a variance and a chaos measurement is what they did of, where when you break the huddle, where are these guys going to be? I think that needs to start changing. Yeah, I mean, it's great when your Jimmys and Joes are better than theirs, but why not give yourself more advantage and start aligning guys in different spots? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I definitely think they need to. And again, one of the things I mentioned was, TJ Watt moving around more. I mean, he even talked about that himself. And so
that's the easy one, but there's a lot of, like Chris Jones moves all over the place.
Right.
Right. Why can't Cam Hayward?
Right. Correct. And so you definitely have to look at what other teams are doing. And, just basically, I mean, I can pull it up right now. The nickel usage. The Steelers, I mean, shoot, man, hold on. Let me pull it up because I actually mapped this out myself because there's not really a website that breaks down actual percentage. Like you can go on to NFL Next Gen Stats or the pro.nfl and you can pull up like how many snaps they had in each personnel. But I actually went through and like did the division myself to break down nickel percentages, and the Steelers ranked 23rd in nickel percentage last year. Like how often they were in nickel.
Yeah.
When you look at some of the top teams that were in nickel, the Eagles were 3rd, and they had obviously an amazing defense. The Bills were 4th. The Titans, who had a very underrated defense, they're up there among the league leaders. The Commanders up there. The Commanders led the weights 82.7% of the time they were in nickel.
Yeah.
And
like the Bills have lived in nickel forever.
Yeah, they were 4th most in nickel. So you definitely have to. I'm not saying you have to go all the way up there to be among the league leaders, but when you have Joey Porter Jr., you have Darius Slay, and you have Jalen Ramsey, you're kind of forced to use those guys as often as you possibly can, and that's going to require being in nickel personnel more often.
Yes, and I did not do the work for 2024. It looks like you did. But I can promise listeners that over the past 5 years, like from 2000 to 2023, they were in the bottom 2 or 3 in usage. I mean, it's either a 3, 4, or a dime.
Yeah.
And you're either too heavy or too light. I mean, like either too slow or too light. I mean, you have to have ridiculous linebackers to pull stuff like that off, or ridiculous versatility. And I think part of it was when they were searching for linebackers post-Shazier, they just didn't want to put 2 of those guys out there in an every down role and play a lot of nickel. They just figured we'll put out another safety or another pass rusher or whatever.
Yeah.
But you can't be super strong in the two extremes and real light in the middle. I mean, because everyone attacks you, they're going to get in the one that they like better. You know what I mean?
Well, and that's the thing is that, being in nickel, I mean, some of those teams, like their percentages on nickel usage on first down is that should be base for majority of situations. I mean, it's not an obvious passing down, yet teams like the Eagles were in it nearly 80, almost 80% of the time on first down. They were just fine living out of nickel. The Steelers were not. The Steelers were almost half of the time.
Yeah.
So
long stretch too. Yeah.
Right. And so but again, the changes that we've seen with adding Jalen Ramsey, adding Darius Slay to the mix, guys who can absolutely man cover, I do think, based off of the personnel changes, that we could see a shift, and they probably need to see a shift.
Yeah, I think so, and I think they're recognizing it. I was asked today on my mailbag, are the Steelers' defensive coaches, Lumping and Tomlin, are they just not very creative? Are they too set in their ways? And I lean towards, I would like to see more creativity, but my final answer to the question was, we'll see in about 4 weeks into the season. I mean, because obviously their personnel moves tell us that they know that there's an issue and it needs to change. Now, will they?
Right.
And I'll be critical if they don't. You know what I mean?
Right.
If they're just rolling out,
if
the exact same thing, right.
If 299 rushing yards in a game doesn't force change, I don't know what does.
Yeah, good point.
All right. Well, we're going to take a break. And then right after this, we will be getting into Jonnu Smith conversation, how the Steelers might use him, how it affects the offense in general. So we'll dive right into that right after this.
At DK Pittsburgh Sports, we take pride in coverage that connects our city's fans to their favorite teams. Now, that connection's stronger than ever. Introducing our all-new state-of-the-art app. Find expert inside reporting and original podcasts. Check live box scores. Track the latest stats. Chat it up with our community of thousands of fans, all in one place. The new app from DK Pittsburgh Sports. Coverage that connects.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Southside Beat here on the DK Pittsburgh Sports Steelers YouTube channel and podcast network. Jonnu Smith, the newest weapon on the Steelers offense, pretty much tells you the Steelers on first and second down when they're on schedule are going to be living out of 12 personnel.
Or 13.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I would be shocked if they're not top two in multiple tight end sets.
Yeah. So I did look up, and I'll have to pull it up here. I'll kick it to you while I try to pull it up. But I think in the best variation of Arthur Smith's offense, which I would go to the 2020 Titans, 35% of the time they were in 12 personnel. And that included Jonnu Smith.
Okay.
That's according to Sharp Football Analysis, by the way. So 35% of the time that was tied with the Eagles among the league lead. So they tried to pretty much live out of 12 personnel, and it worked. They were very, very good out of it. I think they were like 10th or 11th in success rate, like overall success rate. It helps when you have Derrick Henry, for sure. But it's not like they didn't have weapons. They had A.J. Brown, they had Corey Davis, they had Jonnu Smith, they had some weapons in the passing game too, and Ryan Tannehill was absolutely good enough to get the ball to those guys. So the question now is, Pat Freiermuth, Jonnu Smith, how often do you want to just have 12 be what you, because 13, you're almost loaded, in my opinion, you're almost loading up too much, but I don't know. What are your thoughts on this?
So I was searching for it real quick here too. And okay. Yeah. I just wanted to double check, like who are the top of the league this past year in snaps of 12. Now, this doesn't mean you're as good as these teams, but a lot of them are some of the best teams in the league. I mean, the Raiders shouldn't shock anybody because Bowers and Mayer, but the Chiefs are always at the top. The Lions are third. Houston, Baltimore. I mean,
none of the Ravens are up there. Yeah.
Philly's always pretty high, even though they don't have a great second tight end. Now, some of this I bet is you have the lead, so you bring big people in the fourth quarter and, beat them up and you don't spread the field. So, I mean, there's maybe some situational involved. So I don't want people to think just the old dumb teams do it. You know what I mean? Like people lump the Steelers in this, like, well, they're just going to be old and dumb. And, no, I think that there's a lot of value, and the Ravens are the best example of just playing offense in an unorthodox manner.
Yeah.
And by that, I mean, yes, unlike baseball, hockey, basketball, you do get a full week more often than not to prepare for your opponent. But that's far less time than people think in terms of practice time and what is needed. You probably don't have to game plan for the Cubs or the Bulls or the Blackhawks. I'm just picking up Chicago teams for whatever reason. And as much as you do the Bears, because it's such an intricate game with so many people on the field. So I think there's a lot of value to playing things a little bit unorthodox. And I bring up the Ravens because Ricard, nobody does that. No, and they always have big people on the field, whether it's a 300-pound fullback or multiple tight ends with Likely or Andrews, and blocking angles are just different. And that's one of the things I like about Arthur Smith. We're going to play things a little different. We're going to put different people on the field than you're used to playing.
Right.
And I also think Smith, I want our listeners to look at him. He's not Mark Bruner, guys. He's closer to a big slot. And I mean, if you look at his alignment over the years, most of his snaps are not shoulder to shoulder with an offensive tackle in line. I mean, he's really closer to Marquise Colston or somebody like that. I mean, if there was a WR next to his name, it might do him more justice. But it's still an unorthodox way of playing, which I like. And hey, give me my best 11 on the field, which at this point to me is Smith, Freiermuth, and Washington. I know this isn't what you asked, but Washington to me is almost Ricard level hard to play against, and is such an amazing asset because he's really rare, and he's good at it. It's not, it's not just he's big, we'll put him out there. No, he's good and he's big, and we'll put him out there. You know what I mean?
Well, I think the one thing that you could probably even do with certain formations, like for example, you could do a 2x2 formation where Metcalf and Freiermuth are on the left side or on one side of the formation, and then you have Washington on the end of the offensive line, and then Smith is flanking him, as the number one on that side.
And just add up all the poundage of those four guys. That's a lot of weight.
You could do that, and then that's so you're technically in 13 personnel there, but because of the athleticism you have, I mean, Jonnu Smith is absolutely capable. And
you'll probably get base against that formation.
That's what I'm saying.
Right.
The great thing that running out of so much 12 and 13 personnel too, but running out of 12 personnel or just any of those larger sets is that it forces the defense to play in more base defense. And so when that happens, you will have the advantage when it comes to, and it just complete matchup advantage with Jonnu Smith, because you can't put a linebacker on him because they'll beat linebackers. Safeties, it's kind of they probably have a better chance, but when it comes to straight up man coverage, Jonnu Smith is going to win that most of the time. And when you put a corner on him, which, I mean, shoot, one of his touchdowns last year was an improv play where Derek Stingley Jr. from Houston was on him, and he tried to run a dig, and Stingley was on it, and of course,
an elite corner.
Yeah, he's a great corner, and he was on it. But then, as soon as Tua started to kind of roll to the right, Jonnu broke toward the pylon in the end zone, and he just threw it up. I'll just throw it up and let Jonnu go up and get it. And he could, because he had a huge size advantage over Stingley. So there's a number of things that you can do with him. You can line him up out wide. You can put him in the slot. And I think the best way to describe this is the flexibility you have to do a number of different types of formations, whether it be 12 personnel, 13 personnel, anything like that, while you can maintain flexibility to attack through the air, or obviously when you have the number of tight ends on the field to be able to run the football. My biggest question then is, Jonnu and Pat Freiermuth are not the best blocking tight ends.
No, they're not. But
So.
they're better than most blocking wide receivers.
Correct.
So I don't think, man, back to being self-aware.
Yeah.
I don't think that the two players they got are highly versatile for their sides of the ball. You know what I mean? I think that throwing more at opponents is certainly an off-season priority, back to a conversation we were having 10 minutes ago or whatever. And, you know, to your point too, like a big portion of why teams script plays is if you come out with that, they don't know what formation you're in, but they bring out those four and a running back that you mentioned. You know, those three tight ends, Metcalf, and a running back, whoever you pick, whatever. The Ravens might say, I'm playing nickel against that. The Browns might say, I'm playing base against that. Yeah. Some other team might even come out in dime thinking that we're going to count Freiermuth and Smith as wideouts. Probably not, but I'm just getting extreme here. Or use a different personnel package. So you usually find those things out really early in the game by scripting it and saying, okay, this is how they view us. You know, I'm going to throw this 13 out. I'm going to throw this 12 out. What substitutions do they make? Okay, now they're going to we might have an advantage being big, or we might have an advantage because they're big and we're faster, you know? And I love all that part of it. My not concern, but one thing I talked about on a podcast this week is I don't want to be done, though. And I think we talked about this too. Like, I still need a field stretcher. I still need one more wide receiver, or I need Austin or Roman or one of those guys to be really good. Because inevitably, well, for several reasons, but inevitably, it's going to be 3rd and 8. It's going to be 3rd and long. And frankly, the defenses don't care that, okay, you have a personnel advantage of being heavier than me, but you got to get 8 yards here. You know, you know what I mean? Eventually, there's going to be a sack, a holding penalty. You can't always stay ahead of the chains, you know?
No, there will be times where you're backed up. It's just natural part of the game.
Right.
And that does obviously bring up the concern of, okay, well, what happens when you need to be an 11? You know, what happens when you need to have 4 wide out there?
You're losing by 12 with 5 minutes left on the clock, and the whole plan, all that stuff's out the window. You know what I mean? Or frankly, I mean, to play this way, you better be great on first downs.
Yes.
Consistently.
And that is Arthur Smith's like primary, like of all the things that he probably wanted to fix from last year's offense, that is probably number one. And like of all tangible things, because they have to be better on first down.
Yeah.
They were not good on
bad,
right. And they need to be better on first down. They need to be able to run the ball more efficiently. They don't need to go up to 5.1 yards per carry, 4.6, 4.7. They would have been a top 5 rushing offense last year. I mean,
this has been one of my huge offseason things. They're at 4-1, which was at the bottom of the league.
Yeah. And
that was with quarterbacks that could run. That's a cheat code.
Yeah.
You're not going to have that this year, but I need to see 4-3, 4-4. And that would be a big difference over the course of a year. It doesn't sound like much. I mean, I don't need anything over that is wonderful, but if you're not at 4-3, 4-4, it could be a long year, you know.
Yeah.
You don't have Jamar Chase and Higgins and you know, right.
So really quick to kind of finish up on the Jonnu Smith thing, and then we can kind of like go from there. There was immediately some, even when the Jonnu Smith like connection even started, there was some like, well, if the Steelers get him, that erases the need for a WR2.
Not to me.
No, it doesn't. So
it lessens the need.
Right.
Maybe I could sleep at night with Gabe Davis, and before the trade, I couldn't.
So that was pretty much what I was going to go with. What the Steelers have now, having Pat Freiermuth, having Jonnu Smith, knowing that when they are on schedule, first down, second down, that most of the time they're probably going to be in 12 or 13.
I would think, yeah.
So, but you still need to be in 11 at times, and even when you are in 12 and 13, or at least when you're in 12, you got to have another wide receiver on the field, and that wide receiver is most likely going to be lined up out wide. Wouldn't you like for it to be somebody like Gabe Davis who can take the top off of a defense if he's healthy?
Yeah. I mean, I think we brought this up in previous weeks. The pairing of Austin and Metcalf, while those two couldn't look any different, you know, and they kind of look like DeVito and Schwarzenegger, you know, but they're as fast as any pairing in the league.
Yeah.
I mean, they're there with Waddle and Tyreek. I mean, just pure flat out speed.
Foot speed. Yeah.
So they do have field stretching ability, but I still want whoever this next wide receiver is, assuming he comes, he has to be bigger for me. I mean, he needs to be 190 plus. So he can't look like Wilson and Austin. You got two of them. I'm done with that. But I don't know that he has to be a dominant field stretcher if I have to concede something. Like a chain mover would make some sense, a sharp route runner, because of who my quarterback is. Like, you watched all the Rodgers tape. I mean, him and Wilson never quite saw eye to eye because Wilson can drift.
No, they didn't.
No, I mean, that's being kind.
Yeah. They definitely. I mean, and even I'm now, let's say I just got through week 13.
Okay.
Week 13, it's going to be uploaded shortly after the show's done. It's been rendering for the last couple of hours, but it was another game and where they just weren't. There was one where Wilson ran a sluggo seam, kind of going to the outside, and Rodgers tried to hit him, and I think Rodgers expected him to be out of the break quicker. Garrett Wilson wasn't out of the break. I mean, the separation he created was phenomenal. I mean, he was
phenomenal
wide
player.
Open, but
a bad match for Rodgers.
Yeah. So, but yeah, and Randy here brings up why is Romeo Doubs mentioned more than Jaden Reed if the Packers and Steelers were to make a deal?
I would much rather Reed. I just think the Packers would give you Dobbs easier, and he's also up after this year's contract.
Yeah,
they drafted one in the first round. So
yeah,
I just think that's a Packer thing,
right?
And Rodgers played with Dobbs; he didn't play with Reed,
right?
But it probably has some influence.
But I mean, okay, I'm not saying the Jets are going to do this, but what if the Jets made Allen Lazard available? Would you be for that?
It would be on the same level of Gabe Davis of needle moving for me.
Correct.
It would be helpful.
I
could sleep at night with that because you have Smith. Right. If a month ago that would have been the only move, I would not have been content.
Right.
And you get him for nothing. I mean, he'd be a 7th round pick or
I think that's most likely going to be the move. Again, it doesn't have to be, now that you have Jonnu Smith, it doesn't have to be somebody that you that has to be, like you said, I don't think it's going to be Chris Olave. Like, I'll put it that way.
Right.
Like,
I would love it. I'd be interested, but
phenomenal.
Right.
Assuming everything's good with the number of concussions and everything, but yeah, you look at Gabe Davis.
I would say Christian Kirk's the best you could hope for, maybe.
Right. But I mean, let's just say, like, okay, the Steelers have obviously shown interest in Gabe Davis because they had him in for a visit. They didn't sign him right away, obviously, but it wouldn't be the first time the Steelers brought a guy in for a visit and said, hey, we'll revisit in a couple of months, and ended up signing him a couple of months later.
I walked past him in the hallway that day and he had a Steeler t-shirt on.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not sure if that's usual on UFA visits or not. Maybe he just spilled milk on his. I don't know, but he had a Steeler t-shirt on.
So, but if it is Gabe Davis, for example, somebody who can absolutely contribute as a blocker in the run game, and again, deep ball guy, that's just what he's done over the course of his career. Can
understand.
He would force defenses to play in more too high, because you can't pretty much just do nothing but single high against both DK Metcalf and Gabe Davis, because Gabe Davis can burn you, and DK Metcalf, you just don't want to leave ever without a safety over the top.
And Seattle saw the second highest percentage of cover 2 last year, mostly because of Metcalf. It's not because of JSN,
Right. So, yeah, I mean, you get another guy who can stretch the field, which, by the way, can occasionally be Calvin Austin. He can go deep, and he's been pretty decent going deep, but not a guy who's going to consistently threat that way. He's probably best being used out of the slot, and that's probably the way Arthur Smith wants to use him most often as well.
I would assume, yeah.
So, yeah, I think probably Gabe Davis is the most likely guy based off of what you'd have to give up, which is pretty much signing him to a very, very, very cheap contract.
But like, I killed the Jags for the contract they gave Gabe Davis. So it's all relative. You know what I mean? That was a bad deal. They caught, that's a typical Jag move.
Yeah. All right. Really quick to wrap up the show. We did get a contribution from somebody watching live, which we always appreciate here on the channel. And if you aren't a member, I urge you to be a member. It's only 99 cents a month for everything. We're talking this show, Ramon Foster show, the double shot that we do at 4 p.m. on every weekday, my Chalk Talks, everything that we do is only 99 cents a month. So it's very affordable. Dustin gives us $10. Really appreciate that. And he asks, are the Steelers able to afford a swing tackle after paying TJ if and when they pay TJ? Possibly getting another safety and a WR1. Well, they don't really need a WR1. How much of a priority is the swing tackle? I'll let you take it, and then I'll kind of get to.
I think they could afford Julian Blackman, one of those receivers we mentioned, Lazard or Gabe Davis. I mean, again, not a $20 million guy, not McLaurin.
Right.
You know,
right. Everybody get that out of your system now.
Yeah. And they're not going to pay $60 million or $70 million to their top two guys combined.
Right.
But a guy like we mentioned, and yes, a swing tackle. Now, I could absolutely see the free safety. We talked at length about the wide receiver. Folks, the TJ contract will open up money for this year.
Correct.
They have a ton going forward. They still have Cordell Patterson on the roster for some reason. They could get rid of him. They could, I'm sure there's a renegotiation or two if needed. I just don't know where this tackle comes from. They don't grow on trees. I would love offensive line depth is quickly becoming my biggest concern. I just don't know where you get it.
Well, no, it probably is the biggest concern because now slot corner is no longer obviously.
I'm not worried about anything on defense. I mean, well, another safety would be nice, and a wide receiver too would be great. But
I even mentioned it both today on Double Shot and in my live cues on DK Pittsburgh Sports today. Like somebody asked about the safety position, I'm like, I think people are forgetting that Juan Thornhill is a pretty dang good safety for the Chiefs. Like if he's healthy, and he is your,
I'm looking at him as a starter now.
Right, but
decent one.
But see, that's the thing is that when you look at the starting 11 in nickel defense, which the Steelers are in more than anything else, Juan Thornhill's probably the worst of the 11 guys.
I would even go 15 deep. Throw Herbig in there. Throw like the 15 guys that'll play the most. If he's your worst guy, you're loaded.
That's what I'm saying. And like you say, oh, he's the worst. It's like, yes, but he's the worst of a very, very good bunch. And he was a guy who
that's better than Beanie Bishop being your worst.
Yeah. And exactly. And again, with the Chiefs was very, very good. Very good. I mean, he had 3 picks, and I mean, he had 8 interceptions over 4 seasons with the Chiefs. And
he was an above average starting safety.
And if he's above average for the Steelers, we're not talking all pro or pro bowl or anything like that. We're talking above average.
It's also like the easiest position in the league to find somebody off the street.
I mean, Sean Elliott last year.
Yeah, I mean, even at this time of year, like when everything's picked through. I mean, there's still Simmons. There's like 3 or 4 NFL safeties still out there, and there seems like there always is.
Yeah. No, but to go back to the swing tackle thing, like right now, your swing tackle is Calvin Anderson. That's frightening to me. That's a little concerning because if Broderick Jones or Troy Fautanu go down, then that's your first guy coming off the bench. Yeah, probably going to be a little bit concerned. I also understand not wanting to invest too much of the cap in a swing tackle because you have to pretty much. It's almost like taking the floaties off the kid for the first time when you put them in the deep end of the pool. There's no safety net behind Broderick Jones and Troy Fautanu. No. It's like you guys are going to sink or swim because I
don't think we're suggesting they should have matched the Titans' offer for more.
Right.
Of course not.
Right.
But I would have loved. I know that this draft didn't set up that way, but I would have loved Grant out of William and Mary in the 3rd round. You know what I mean? Like someone else that had some pedigree, not just bottom of the roster guys.
Yeah. No, I think, but. Yes, I do think they could afford. And listen, there's still all of training camp. There's cut down day. Cut down day is I'm like, my gosh, you are going to see the Steelers. It feels like it happens every year. The Steelers make some sort of move in which they take a guy who's being cut from somebody else that ends up making the 53. Not talking about a guy that they take and stash on the practice squad. Talking about taking a guy that was on somebody else's 90 man and being like, nope, we want that guy to be on our 53.
Yeah. And there's so many moves too, where you trade Kendrick Green for a 6th round pick. Like they might trade Waitman in a 7th for a safety or something goofy like that. You know what I mean? Like Joe Hayden wasn't a Steeler on July 9th, by the way, guys. You know, like there's you could get one more dude
Yeah, it happens every single year, and I think that's the one thing. I don't know if it's just because, like, usually with sports like baseball and hockey, that rosters are usually set by the time either spring training or training camp comes around. It's not always that way in football. It's usually very fluid, and training camp will, first off, it will force not just the Steelers to see exactly what they have, but also other teams are seeing what they have. And
that's the thing, is we drafted this safety in the 4th round. Kind of liked him at mini camp. Boy, now I really like him. I'm going to cut the $4 million guy and trust the rook because we don't have any cap space. Right.
And what if Omar Khan called the Saints in May and said, "Hey, what about Chris Olave?" And they're saying, "Get lost." And they just hang up the phone. And then by the time July 31st rolls around, they're like, "Yeah, we're waving the white flag already. Like, the season hadn't even started. We're not.
It's over.
Yeah, we're just waving the white flag." They pick up the phone. "Hey, Omar.
Remember that conversation?
Yeah. Let's. So
because a ton of injuries happen. Right.
Yeah. So
but
really,
the bottom line to that question: finding the offensive tackle, though, is the hardest part.
It is.
Those guys aren't out there, nor is anybody trading them.
Yeah. All right, really quick. I know we're over time, but I do want to get to this. Dwight asks, "Will TJ's contract be above or below $35 million a year?" I don't think it will exceed Garrett's. I disagree with you. It's going to be the highest AAV to a non-quarterback, 1,000%.
Okay, I don't have a strong feeling. I would have guessed slightly under, but I totally get it.
So again, but again, the one thing that I think a lot of people, and again, when you take fans who are, at least in Pittsburgh, fans who are Steelers fans are usually also Penguins and Pirates fans. At least in baseball, contracts are fully guaranteed in baseball. You never have to negotiate guaranteed money. It's always, what's the AAV going to be and what's the contract length going to be? That's it.
The player gets every cent.
Right. And the player gets everything no matter what. Obviously, there are certain circumstances. Player retires early, insurance, so on and so forth. But football, it's completely different. You have to worry about how much of the contract's guaranteed, how far into the contract does the guaranteed money go. AAV is typically not the sticking
kind of like the worst way to look at it.
Right. Because, okay, if TJ Watt signs a 5-year contract that's worth $43 million a year, but he only ends up playing 3 years of that contract because that's the only amount of the contract that's guaranteed, he doesn't get all that money. And so all the money you were freaking out about, he's not even going to get it anyway.
That's what I was going to say. Really look into the structure when it happens, because if in your situation, year 4, he might be like an $80 million cap hit, and he's not going to see any of that no matter what. They'll tear it up and restructure, or he'll retire, or what,
Exactly. So
it's going to be it's going to be more team friendly than the agent tells you when it comes out.
Correct.
When Schefter reports it, once you dig in the next day, you'll be like, it's a little more team friendly than I thought. I'll promise you that much. Right.
It always is. And I think even people, whenever I understand Watt was in his prime when he signed the contract, when he signed his last contract extension. I get it that it's different between, he's aged 4 years. I get it. But when Watt signed his last contract, it was also the highest contract for any defensive player ever. And when he signed it, if the Steelers give him the same contract based off of percentage of the cap,
I say percentage of cap is what we're about to say. That's all that matters.
It would be 42, like just under $43 million a year. Like if it's the same percentage of the cap as the last contract was. So even if you go a tad bit less, it's still like, even if they gave him $40.1 million, so it's still more than Myles Garrett.
It's still less of an investment than the first time around.
Correct.
Like DK Metcalf's last contract with Seattle was a higher percentage of the cap than the one he just signed now.
Right.
But the average value is way higher.
But people don't understand how fast the NFL cap is growing.
They don't realize how healthy the league is.
Right. And so when they hear $42 million a year for an edge rusher, you're like, that's quarterback money. No, quarterbacks are making $60 million now.
Yeah. Wait till next year. Wait till the year for that. Right.
So
all this gambling money that's coming in the league. I mean, yeah.
And Randy brings up inflation. It's like, yes, but it's not inflation of the US dollar. It's inflation of the
eggs still cost the same. Well, bad example, but things still cost the same, but everyone's making more because the league's healthier than ever.
And Dwight says, "God, a percentage of the cap is an interesting way to approach it," but that's how teams approach it.
The
That's
best
not
way to approach it.
Yeah, because it's not how any like that's how literally teams, because they are looking at how much of the cap is allocated to each position, how much of the cap is allocated to my very best player. Well, TJ Watt's going to be their very best player, and am I willing to give 15% of the cap to TJ Watt? Absolutely, because he's our best player, and there are some best players.
And your quarterback's probably going to be a rookie for 4 years,
right? Or 5. Like even if but even for the first 4 years, if you draft a quarterback next year, he's making way less than than he'll ever make.
And people always, they have such an overpriced defense. I understand that, but they paid their quarterback room like nothing last year. They're paying it very little this year.
Yeah.
If they had Mahomes, they would not have the highest paid defense in the league. You know, like they're using their money. You know.
Yeah. So you have to. Well, first off, you have to use your money. It's a salary, like every salary cap league, you have a floor. So every team has to spend above the floor, or you also get penalties. So you have to spend. And so,
you can also roll over what you don't. People don't realize that too. The rollover stuff's nice. Yeah,
it really is. So TJ is going to get paid. I guarantee you that the biggest hang up right now is the guaranteed money. That especially when you talk about a player that's going to turn 31 during the season. Guaranteed money is going to be is probably the biggest sticking point going on right now. TJ probably wants as much guaranteed money as possible. And when you have his resume, he has every right to demand as much guaranteed money as he wants. The Steelers also probably have every right to be a little bit concerned. Dip in production last year. He's getting older. He's on the wrong side of 30 now. So maybe
Big Brother didn't last as long as you thought at this age either. You know, I mean, like it's who knows?
Right. So, but either way, it's still TJ Watt. It's the Pittsburgh Steelers. They get this stuff done, even if it's not signed until the Wednesday before the Steelers go to New Jersey to play the Jets.
No, that was my last thing. Is it doesn't have to happen in the next couple of weeks either.
And do you know who the happiest person on the planet will be if TJ Watt goes the entire training camp and preseason without ever stepping onto a field?
Either Mike Tomlin or the outside linebacker coach.
Mike Tomlin.
Yes.
He like that entire saga that happened 4 years ago when this whole contract extension thing was going on back then.
Yep.
Mike Tomlin was not worried whatsoever. People are, well, what about TJ Watt? He's not going to be ready for the season. Man, he went out there and won Defensive Player of the Year.
Yeah. I know he's not going to stub his toe at practice. And more reps for Jack Sawyer. Great.
Exactly. Great. Anyway, we've gone on long enough. Went way over time. Appreciate you guys for tuning in. This is a fun show. Be back next week. It's probably going to be a little bit later in the week. I am going to Atlanta on Friday to cover MLB All-Star Week, and I won't be getting back until next Wednesday. So
we'll
it'll be fun. Yeah. So possibly could be Wednesday night. Depends on how I'm feeling. Honestly, I might be tired, but we'll see. Either way, we'll be back next week, and then week after that, man. 2 weeks from today, we are actually just not bringing it up. 2 weeks from today is players reporting to training camp.
So you and I are probably gonna have a beverage together 2 weeks from today, something like that.
I'm looking forward to it, man.
Cool.
Looking forward to it. Catch you guys on the Flippity Flip. We'll see you later.